It's Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on EWTN Radio. Jerry Usher here, Debbie Georgiani in Traverse City, Michigan, where it is absolutely beautiful. And Debbie, I hope and pray on this final day of Barriga Radio's pledge drive that people are stepping up and making sure you reach the goals.
Yes, final hours, final day, and it's been exciting. We have a lot of participation, so please keep up the prayers. We sure do need it, and also the participation. If you're listening in northern Michigan, call in and pledge to Barriga Radio. Yes, it's just been a wonderful experience. Great weather, Jerry. Yeah, fabulous. And we met a lot of our listeners of Take Two yesterday in Petoskey. They came in and especially shared that they love Take Two.
Very good. Well, my best to you and to Dave, who's co-hosting with you, and the entire team at Barriga Radio. So thanks for being there. And again, folks, wherever you are, when your station comes on the air and says, hey, it's our pledge drive, it's our share-a-thon, it's our care-a-thon, it's our membership drive, whatever they call it in your area, dig deep, please. We have unquestionably moved into an age when we need Catholic media more than ever. So support EWTN and your local affiliates, because there is a lot of weirdness out there, and a lot of that, Debbie, kind of creeps into the family sometimes, and spouses can be a little bit at odds with one another. And that's our topic for today, dear listeners. We want to hear from you. If you're married, if you're engaged, maybe you've got a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and there comes those inevitable moments when you have a disagreement, maybe some kind of an argument or a fight. Okay, so then you're both just sort of stewing, and each of your minds is going, she needs to reach out to me because it was her fault. And she's going, he needs to make the first move toward reconciliation. So how does this work? Does one or the other of you tend to make the first overture, the first move, the first word of apology, maybe even if it wasn't your fault? You know, how does reconciliation come about within your relationships? What do you think, Deb?
I have a lot to say on this. I think a lot about this, actually, because Jerry, I think we've been traveling a few times where, have you ever seen me ask couples that have been married 50 and 60 years and more? I ask them, what's the secret of happy marriage? Okay, yeah. And you know the answer, that it's hilarious. The husband, this has happened at least probably a half a dozen times. The husband has said, and he's probably in his late 70s or 80s, he has said, be quick to say you're sorry. That's what he says. That's for the recipe for happy marriage. And the wife, who's equal, probably around the same age, says she would put her finger up to her mouth and say, don't say a lot. And that's the secret of the happy marriage, according to these couples that have been married, 50, 60 plus years. And that's my little survey that I do when I'm traveling. But Jerry, there's a lot to say about that, because what it says to me is that, I've always felt that women have kind of a steel trap memory. You say something to a woman, you tell a woman that she looks fat in her outfit, and she will never forget that. In fact, she probably will never wear that outfit again. Okay, it's really interesting. And so I'm going to just put it out there. I think husbands need to say they're sorry first.
Well, there you have it. Guys, what do you think? 1-800-585-9396. And, of course, this is not to pit men against women, husbands against wives. This is really, we want to have an honest discussion in your relationship. Maybe you've been married 30, 40, 50 years, and you've kind of got... You have this down, okay? It's unfortunate when arguments and disagreements come up, but the flip side of that is it gives you an opportunity, I think, not only to reconcile, but hopefully I want to have you reconciled, and it's really taking your relationship to a deeper level. I really believe that happens. But does one or the other of you tend to be the first one to say, all right, you know what, honey, come here. I'm sorry, And does one of you take the initiative in that? 1-800-585-9396. Or is
Jerry,
it... Go ahead.
Jerry, it has to be a sincere I'm sorry. Because you can say a very flippant I'm sorry.
Oh, don't you think a spouse would know when it's not sincere?
Oh, absolutely. And so I think it has to be a genuine, but going back to what I said about how the elderly couples say that, you have to be quiet, you don't say as much. I think that helps, because sometimes we say things without thinking in a relationship. And so then, the next step is we have to say the words, I'm sorry. And so maybe sometimes it's best just to kind of reserve some of our comments, especially when they could be hurtful.
Sure.
Trying to prevent it. Preventing having to say you're sorry. Don't do it. My husband always says, well, you wouldn't have to say don't keep doing it, and then you don't have to say you're sorry.
Well, it is, folks. It is just human nature, dear friends, and it is. There's concupiscence. I say this, Debbie. I've never been married, and I can only imagine. I always say I'm one of the most, if not the most, selfish person I know. And I can see within marriages, it requires a tremendous amount of eliminating that selfishness or working on that and really trying to serve and please and bring the other person closer to Jesus. So there are going to be those moments, dear listeners, when disagreements occur within a marriage, or if you're not married, maybe engaged or a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. So does one or the other of you tend to be the one who kind of takes the lead in smoothing things over? Is it a 50-50 split? Maybe it's one of you this time, maybe another one next time? And what has been the fruit of this really humbling yourself? Each of you.
Yeah.
Both, Debbie, don't both people have to really be humble in a situation like that, right?
Yeah, you definitely have to have the ability to, you have to lose your ego. You really do in a relationship. I mean, my middle name is I'm sorry. So I'm very used to saying it. And I say it very genuinely. My husband says, you say the best I'm sorry ever. But I have no problem with it. I did struggle with it, I think, early on in marriage. But yeah, now I'm thinking about it as we're doing the show right now. I say I'm sorry a lot. And it actually is, I feel good about it. It's very freeing because I don't want, okay, Jerry, here it is. I don't want that wedge between us. So when a genuine I'm sorry is from my heart to Marty's, then immediately it's all reconciled and everything's reunited, and that feels good. So yeah.
All right.
For it.
We've got, it looks like one phone line that is still not occupied. What would you like to say about this? Making the first move toward reconciliation in a relationship. 800-585-9396.
The National Catholic Register is America's most complete Catholic news source with a comprehensive view of the world from a distinctly Catholic perspective. If it's shaping the world as we know it, you'll find it at ncregister.com.
Third Millennium Media presents Debbie Georgianni.
The world tells us not to be merciful, and we as Catholic Christians are called to take a step back and look at it in a different way. We must practice mercy, especially if we want to receive mercy.
Debbie Georgianni, co-host of Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on EWTN Radio, wants to visit your parish retreat or conference. Invite Debbie Georgianni today online at thirdmillenniummedia.com.
60 on 10 with Monsignor Charles Pope.
The eighth commandment, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. At one level, the reputation a person has is one of their most precious gifts, and to intentionally harm the good reputation of someone is a very grave matter. We can do this often through detraction by disclosing others' faults without a valid reason, or calumny, just outright lying about other people. Likewise, through rash judgment. This commandment also protects the truth, which is another very, very great good. To lie is to speak something that we know is false with the intention of deceiving others. We ought to be dedicated to the truth. It is the truth that sets people free, while errors and lies entrap people in many difficult and often sinful situations. The Lord asks us to give witness to the truth of the gospel. This commandment therefore asks us to stay dedicated to the truth and to other people's reputation. The eighth commandment, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Hi, this is Dan Burke from the National Catholic Register.
Hello, this is Bishop David O'Connell of the Diocese of Trenton.
Hi, this is Teresa Tomeo, host of Catholic Connection, and thanks for listening to the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
We are so glad you're with us, and The only thing better than having you listen or watching on YouTube or EWTN's Catholic Radio Facebook page is to participate. You can comment on either of those places. You can email take2, the number 2, at EWTN.com, or you can call and let us hear your beautiful voice at 1-800-585-9396. Today we're talking about reconciling within marriages and other sorts of relationships. And Debbie, I just real quick before we get to the calls, you said something. You don't like to have that wedge. You don't like to have that burden.
Nope.
Be carrying that around. I don't either. I hate it. And so I'm not always the best at approaching somebody first, especially when I've been the one to kind of cause the rift, because it takes swallowing your pride and being humble. But I really, it bothers me to have any kind of distance between someone that's really, really dear to me. And like I said, not being married, I can only imagine that probably intensifies within a marriage. You're living under the same roof, typically sleeping in the same bed, and if there's, So folks, we want to hear how do you work through difficulties in your marriage, and who makes the first move, and how does that all unfold afterward? Hopefully there's bliss and harmony restored to your marriage. 1-800-585-9396.
So that's the number to call. You can also text us. You text the letters EWTN to 55000. Wait for a response. Put your first name in, your question or your comment. We'd love to hear, give us your marriage advice on this. And maybe you're of the feeling that sorries are overrated. Like some people do feel that they're insincere, and maybe just saying the words, it's not necessarily going to reconcile you. Maybe you have to do more. You have to earn trust back or something of that nature. So please keep that in mind. Also, too, that women have memories that they never ever forget, and so that can be quite difficult for a woman to accept sometimes, not all women. Or something is said, and even though there's an I'm sorry, it doesn't erase the memory. And so that can be quite painful as well. And so reconciliation can sometimes, be delayed, if you will. So we're talking about that today, who are making the first move towards reconciliation. We want to hear your takes on this. This is what you drive the show. You make the show. You are the show. So the number is 1-800-585-9396.
Okay, we were going to go to Kasha. Kasha, you just got disconnected there. I hope that you can call back, because we love to hear what your take would have been there. 1-800-585-9396. We're going to get to Kim in just a second here. Just want to also invite those of you, give a quick reminder, Debbie, that we have been getting some emails. People have been asking about, when are we going to hear more about the Jerry and Debbie retreat?
Yes.
In Hansville. So I thought before we get to the phones here today, we haven't mentioned this for quite a few days, quite a while actually. So, and right. You and I were just talking about it before the show. So I know we're just maybe hours, if not a short day or two away from sending out the first real, substantive update.
Well, we were just finishing. St. Bernard Abbey is finishing up the online registration, so everything's still in place and still moving along. Thank you for being so patient with us on the waiting list. I shouldn't say waiting list, the list of you were interested in information. And we'll be sending that out. Hopefully, I would love to get it out tomorrow. If not, the latest, Jerry, would be Monday. But just keep watching for that. It's still plenty of time to book your reservations, your plane reservations, or to plan for driving in. We just think it's going to be a great, wonderful experience. So please just be looking for that on the list. And then we're going to be announcing it live, opening it up. Jerry, it would probably be, when would that be? It would be November 1st, right?
Yep, I believe so.
Yeah. On All Saints Day, Jerry. Wow.
Yeah, and if you want information, if you want to get on the list of there's no obligation, you're not signing up, you can get information. Just go to jerryanddebbie.com, jerryanddebbie.com, and there is just a quick little form, name, email address, and you'll be put on the list for getting regular email updates about this. And we really do hope, Debbie, I think we're going to have a really nice crowd, a group of people gathering with us. We're going to try and limit it to, about 80 or 90?
It's 90. It's 90 plus us. So it'll be about almost close to 100. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
I'm just loving it.
hopefully we will sell out. But the most important thing is we want you, our listeners, because we know you are quality, okay? We know that the Holy Spirit is a great part of your life, and you want to allow him to work in your life. And so if he, as Debbie always says on the show, if he nudges or prompts you to be a part of the event, it's next February 9th through 11th in Cullman, Alabama.
Right, and we're going to be taking a trip to the Shrine of the Most Blessed Sacrament to visit Mother Angelica's resting place. And I just, Jerry, you know how I feel about that. When you and I went there, I was just a blubbering mess. I couldn't stop crying. I know, it was horrible. It was absolutely horrible, but it was so beautiful at the same time. And all I could think of is, and all I could say is thank you to her. And I just want everyone to experience that. It's just wonderful. So yeah, if you just could be a bit more patient. We just want to make sure we have everything correct before we send it out to the list of people that asked for information, and then we'll release it to the general public. But yeah, I'm hoping we get a full capacity. That would be a lot of fun to get to meet everybody.
All right, today's Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Do you or your spouse make the first move toward reconciliation? And it would be great if you didn't call today, because that would mean you never fight with your spouse. But if you've had, again, just disagreements, tensions, and then there's been maybe that awkward silence, and both of you just out of love for the other, you just want to really go to the other one and say, honey, let's get this behind us. So how does that unfold? How does that play out in your life? Share your experience today at 1-800-585-9396. Before we do go to calls, Debbie, there's a couple comments from Facebook Live, one that you will appreciate because you mentioned what that elderly couple said that you talked to. Uh-huh. And Sean says this on Facebook Live. He says, my grandfather always said the secret to a long marriage was two simple words. Yes, dear. What do you think? Is that's short and simple?
That works for me. Absolutely, I'm fine with that. That's hilarious. Yeah, that's so true. And send your comments in on Facebook. We read them, we respond to them. It's really a wonderful way to keep the conversation going. So I think we're going to go right to our first up listener is Ezekiel in Toledo, Ohio at Annunciation Radio. Hi, Ezekiel. Welcome to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Hello, how are you?
Doing
Good,
well.
Ezekiel.
So what's your take? Yeah. Yep. Oh yeah, what's your take on this?
Well, I usually like to say sorry first, just to keep the peace. Even if I feel my wife should say she's sorry, I usually like to give in just to keep the peace and keep the kids happy.
Okay, so Ezekiel, I need to ask you two things, just because I want to learn. Okay, so you say you're sorry first to keep the peace. Does she take it as a sincere "I'm sorry"? That's the first question. That's the first. And part B of that is, do you ever say to her, "Okay, I said it first. Now you say you're sorry for what you did"?
I never say the latter. It usually takes a little while for my sorry to affect. Usually the emotion is still there, and sometimes it might take an hour or two, and then you forget why you were even arguing. It could be over a TV show. It could be, a mistake you made driving.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. See, in my household, Ezekiel... Go ahead.
We just celebrated 23 years. We were married at St. Mary's Catholic Church back in the 90s, and, excuse me, usually it's just easier to say you're sorry to add another few years to your marriage, because it's tough nowadays to stay married and bring your family up.
That's true. That's true. So to keep the peace, you're going to be the first one to say you're sorry. I think that's great. I will tell you, my husband and I have been really immature at times, where we both know we hurt the other one out of something we said just unconsciously or even consciously. I don't know. Well, as you said, we probably can't remember it now. But we've even done the thing, Ezekiel, where we'll say, okay, well, you say I'm sorry. No, you say I'm sorry. You say it first. If you say it, then I'll say it. We've even been that juvenile, and it's so silly when you think about it, Ezekiel, because you're right. After about an hour or two, you don't even remember what it was.
Usually, if you wait too long, you might start laughing if you're waiting for the other one to say it. And we've done that.
Well,
because it's ridiculous why you're even bickering sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Ezekiel.
But that's my take on it.
Well, and congratulations on 23 years. And you mentioned having been married in, I believe you said St. Mary's Catholic Church. And Ezekiel, we had a listener, Cheryl, on Facebook Live said this: many marriages don't work if the ultimate goal is not the same between the two. And for me, I'm a communicator for a living, so I would just wonder from your perspective, Ezekiel, just talk about real quickly the importance of communicating, because I think a lot of people might feel like, well, the other one they won't receive my apology, or they won't be willing to forgive, but you don't know until you actually get the words out. So how important is that communication in your marriage?
It's really the most important. I remember when I took the classes before I got married, I didn't even know why I was taking them, and we were taking them in the basement at St. Mary's, and I remember Sister Virginia Welsh said, if you can't say the words, write them down and give them to her anyway, because sometimes people can process written words, at their own discretion, and if you try to say it right when the event's happening, they just might be too mad. So I've used that approach many times, and, sometimes those letters last a lifetime and the words are forgotten, and they may pull that letter out, where you say, do you remember when I told you I loved you? And they would say, I still got that card. And it brings back a spark, that spark you might have had when you were, newlyweds. And a few years into it, you get busy and you kind of forget what actually brought you together when you're so busy being parents.
That's very true. Yeah, the kids definitely, and that's the thing. Then we did a show on empty nesters, Jerry. Remember that? And it's interesting because you do have to constantly build and continue to nurture and take care of the relationship while you're raising the kids. And that's kind of a hard thing sometimes to do. But having cards, heartfelt cards, and different things that you can build memories on. I agree with you, Ezekiel. You can tap back into those, and they feel really good. And it just continues to grow. And you realize that you really do belong together, and you really are journeying together. I love that. That's a great take on things.
Very good take, Ezekiel. Thank you for the call. We'll let you go on that. 1-800-585-9396. Makes me want to hear from anybody listening. If maybe you've got a really unique, creative way of reaching out to your spouse. Or a loved one after a disagreement. Maybe it's a letter, like Ezekiel said. Maybe it's a rose. Maybe you send your wife a rose, gentlemen. Or maybe there's a woman out there who decides, we're having a disagreement. Things are a little tense between us. I'm going to cook his favorite dinner tonight or something like that. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of your olive branch. Love to hear what some of those might be. 1-800-585-9396. Okay, a lot of you we're going to get to. Hang on if you're on hold. Chad is in Houston, listening on Guadalupe Radio. Hi, Chad. Welcome to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Oh, hello there. This is... Sorry, I don't know how to just open up there.
Yep, just go for it.
I know I wanted to talk about not only letters filling up on what the last gentleman just said. With letters, it's great to have something to reflect on, but my experience also is apologizing in letters, and then I'm apologizing in person. But with me and my fiance, we've never just stopped there because life's always been so complicated. All sorts of things are going on, and we have to spend time in prayer and go with one another to try and actually figure out what's the best way to both make amends for anything that we've done, as well as try and build a foundation for our future and, God willing, the future for our children, and always trying to keep in mind how can we help each other make it to heaven. And that was actually a really awesome piece of advice I received from a priest recently, is start speaking with your fiance about just that fact that I want to go to heaven with you, and I want to do everything in my power to do that. It's the most difficult conversation I've ever had to have with my fiance, but it's also one of the most beneficial ones that I've gone through within our relationship. And that's where we come back to whenever we apologize and ask the question, how can we move forward together, and how can we go before our Lord and receive the graces required in order for us to fulfill our vocation.
Mm-hmm. Well, Chad, that's true reconciliation. See, what you're doing is you're not just saying the I'm sorry to kind of sweep it into the past and move forward. You're actually putting that time and effort into building on that and reconciling to the point where you're saying, no, we want to make this better. We don't want to repeat that. We want to actually unite in a way where it's going to help each other get to heaven. I think that is brilliant. I think that is beneficial, and I think it's very necessary. It does take time and effort, though, and that's the thing that I think sometimes relationships just don't want to put that into, and you're doing that. So God bless you for doing that. I think it's a great way to safeguard your relationship into the future, Chad. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. Chad, thank you so much. Calling in from Houston, Texas. Still prayers for you in Houston, Texas. We'll be right back on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Father Larry Richards.
God doesn't need you to sit there and protect him. If you receive communion unworthily, it says you could be sick or die. But we don't have to protect Almighty God. So God can protect himself. So he knows that man's heart. And if he's not in a state of grace, that communion can become the bread of death to him. You don't need to do that. God can take care of himself.
Open Line with Father Larry Richards. Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Hi, I'm Doug Keck, and this is an EWTN Bookmark Brief. I'm speaking here with Denise Bossert. I just finished an interview on her book, Gifts of the Visitation. 9 Spiritual Encounters with Mary and Elizabeth is the title. So tell us, Denise, what's this book about?
Well, the Visitation, I believe, is a blueprint for evangelizing. Our Lady makes it look like it's what we're born to do, because it is what we're born to do. And we discover from her that the first thing she does after receiving our Lord is to go and share him with her relative Elizabeth. So she is the Christ sharer, the Christ bearer, and she calls us too, upon receiving the Eucharist, to be sent out, to go out and share and bear Christ.
Thank you so much, Denise Bossert. The book is Gifts of the Visitation, 9 Spiritual Encounters with Mary and Elizabeth, published by Ave Maria Press, available through the EWTN Religious Catalog, EWTNRC.com. Look for the entire interview coming soon to EWTN on Bookmark, and this has been an EWTN Bookmark Brief, and thanks for joining us.
You know what Catholic radio is? It's training for the troops. It's a inter-aural of the ear boot camp. The folks who listen, who grow in their faith, grow in charity, grow in all the virtues, they then go out and exert an influence far beyond just themselves. Catholic radio has an exponential effect for bringing people deeper into the faith.
Dr. Ray Garindi thinks Catholic radio is important. So should you. EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Wow, where's this week going? Already Thursday of Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. And today we are hopefully, dear God in heaven, we hope and pray that every topic that we prayerfully present to you, our great listeners, and then your participation in the show, we hope and pray, especially with one like today, that if there's anyone listening who might be in the middle of conflict with a spouse or a loved one right now, might hear something that, like Chad just said a minute ago, and really take to heart that desire not just to take the problem and say, okay, that's gone, but really to come out of it even deeper, more deeply, deeper and better. So thank you again, Chad, for that call. And by the way, Steve on Facebook Live said this about reconciling. He said chocolates work.
Jerry, did you catch me laughing? Because I think I had my mic up when you were talking about what certain things that you do, and that was Steve just said that about chocolates. I was chuckling because I was thinking of a friend who's been married about 25 years, and she actually had this deal with her husband that anytime he would say anything that was like unkind or just anything that could possibly hurt her, he had to, after he said he was sorry, he had to buy her something.
Oh, wow. Okay.
She had a lot of stuff. So I was laughing, but I thought, I don't know if that's, I don't want to, I'm not out, to criticize or anything, but that could be kind of problematic, I think, if you had to always do that. Wouldn't you think?
Well, it just would raise the question of, is it coming from the heart, on both
Right.
people's sides, So,
Right.
but let's hear what more of you have to say. Cynthia is in Morton, Texas, listening also on Guadalupe Radio. Cynthia, you're up next here on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on the topic of reconciliation. Hi, Cynthia.
Hi, Jerry. Hi, Debbie.
Howdy.
Hi. How are you?
Debbie, I don't know if you remember, about a year ago, I told you that you were my blood sister. We're both O positive.
Yes, that's right. Hi, Cynthia.
Do you remember that?
Yes, when we talked about that. Wow.
Yes, we did. Well, I'm calling back again. I always call, but I can't ever get through. But I've got some wonderful advice because I heard it at once, and I was flabbergasted, and I just didn't even know, because it was so simple, but yet so profound and so sincere that I heard. But I just want to say I love you, Debbie. I love you, Jerry. And Jerry, I want you to take notes because I know that one of these days Miss Wright is going to come and cross your path, and you're going to find a wonderful woman. You sound like a wonderful man. I know you're going to get married one of these days. And when you do, Jerry, I think you should get married in a cathedral because you're going to have a lot of friends who are going to want to be there.
Cynthia,
Okay,
I'm not so sure that any woman could put up with me. I'll be very honest with you. So, but anyway.
Oh, never say never, dear. Never say never. Anyway, we all know our brother Billy Graham, and he was married to a sweet lady named Ruth Graham. Bless her heart and soul. May she rest in peace. But they asked Ruth Graham one time how she had been married or what did it take to be married so many years to Billy Graham. Because they were married, what, Debbie, over 70, 75 years?
Oh, it had to have been. Yeah, it has to be.
Yeah, okay. And you know what she said? It was so simple, but sometimes if you're not a Christian, it's so hard. But you know what her advice was? And I want the whole world to hear out there. She said that it took 2 forgivers to stay married that long. Isn't that just the truth and awesome, Debbie?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
It takes 2 forgivers. I mean, you know what? You just can't really put it in a nutshell except right there. That's right there. Takes 2 forgivers.
Well, that's what I was sharing, Cynthia, about the fact that you really can't have an ego. You have to put your egos aside when you're in a relationship, especially if you want to do what like Chad's doing with his fiance, setting that great foundation of going into a marriage together, of wanting to help the other one get to heaven. I mean, that's the purpose of that. And I agree with you. And to have 2 forgivers, then you'd almost be racing to say, I'm sorry, in a really genuine way, because you don't want that huge wall between the 2 of you, because that wall gets thicker and thicker over the years if you allow it to. And I agree with you, Cynthia. That's great advice. I actually wrote it down. I've never heard that, and I've read a lot of stuff about Billy Graham, so I just made note of it, Cynthia.
And you know what? If I can just add a comment to that, Cynthia, as well. I think that's beautiful the way you stated that. It takes 2 forgivers. And what that takes to be a forgiver requires the understanding that nobody is perfect, okay, other than Jesus Christ. And, Mary was sinless as well. But Jesus being God, I mean, if you're in the Holy Family, okay, maybe there was harmony all the time. But for the rest of us, there's concupiscence. There is the inclination towards sin, to be selfish, to think of ourselves first. And even when you're courting someone, you're engaged to someone, it can be different than when you're married. I really believe, Debbie, that they should hand out microscopes to people who get married, because as soon as you actually make that, the ultimate commitment, then you're going to start to see the little things, the little things that bother you about somebody else. And I think the onus is on each person in the relationship to say, well, that's part of her, that's part of him. I love all of her, I love all of him, even these little quirky things and stuff. And so to go into it with your eyes open, understanding that you need to be a forgiver, and even more foundationally than that, you need to understand people are going to be different. They're going to have different wants, likes, like I say, traits, quirks, and stuff, and just be ready to roll with those things. I'm not saying it's easy. But Cynthia, what do you think of what we've shared compared to what you were saying there?
It's awesome. I love you guys. Y'all are so full of wisdom. Praise God and thank God that we have you guys in EWTN. And there's not a day that doesn't go by that I don't say, Viva EWTN. You know, because I know Spanish and I'm Spanish.
Amen to that. Amen to
Amen. And I just want to say this, Debbie, that I hope and pray that you and Marty will live and be together and married to a ripe old age.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll pray that too, my same blood type sister. Okay, but here's the thing, Cynthia. I just looked it up. I didn't realize that Billy Graham and his wife, Ruth, have several marriage tips.
Wow.
So if you, so, and it's very interesting, Cynthia. They've written books on it and all sorts of stuff. And it says they were married for over 63 years. And so you're right. If anybody, fabulous. I'm looking at them right now. 5 pieces to a happy marriage, all these different tips. So way to go, Cynthia. That was a home run.
All right, Cynthia, thanks for the call and your enthusiasm. It means a lot to us. We appreciate it so much. Okay, we've got a number of you on hold. We're just going to get one to you, to the next. So hang in there if you're on the line. Grace is next in Bellevue, Ohio, listening on Annunciation Radio to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Grace, what wise words do you have for us on this topic today?
Good afternoon. How are you two?
Hi, Grace. Doing well. Thank you so much for calling.
My husband and I will be married 43 years this coming Monday, and I won't kid you, like any other marriage, there's always, frustrations and arguments and that, but I wanted to share with when my mother and father, when I was growing up, my dad was very, very Italian and, of course, a very huge temper, and I was always amazed they could have the most heated arguments, but yet before he walked out the door, he would walk over to her, kiss her goodbye, and say he loved her. But yet they were still fighting. So that always amazed me. So when my husband and I got married, I said, let's make sure that no matter what, that we never leave the house without telling each other that we love each other. And so we kind of did the same thing. And so even if we were frustrated, I think that kind of helped keep us together through some of those frustrations because we made sure that we still let each other know, despite the fact we were having a disagreement, that we still loved each other. Does that make sense?
Oh, more than you'll ever know. I'm chuckling not at your story. I'm chuckling because my husband and I are Sicilian, so I can relate to your dad, and we do the exact same thing. As a matter of fact, we've had neighbors say to us, "Are you guys crazy?" Because they'll hear us arguing, and and then we hug and kiss each other as we're getting into our separate cars to go off to do work. And my one neighbor goes, "How do you do that?" And because we say we're Italian, but we
there you go.
we get it, and I think that has. Can I share something, Grace? Because my husband and I have really been reflecting on this lately. It has a lot to do with, and a lot of Mediterranean cultures, a lot of Latin cultures. We're very passionate in the way when we say things with all of our heart. So when we are mad, we're mad to 100%. When we're happy, it's 100%. And we do things in a very full way. And I think sometimes that can be a problem in a marriage, or it can be actually quite maybe even fun and exciting in a way, because it is it does have that passion attached to it. So it's all how you navigate it and how you work with it. And it sounds like, Grace, in your situation, you that was a great recipe that you put in. And I thought my microphone my headset wasn't working, because I thought I heard you say, Grace, 43 years. And when you first started speaking, I thought, oh, this is a newlywed calling, because you sound so young.
No, it'll be 43 years this coming Monday.
Wow.
Yeah.
Praise God.
And I would be lying to you if I said, and I mean anybody that's married knows, there were times we did hate each other because, as you've said with other callers, you're working through raising children and just the stresses of that. And then as time went on, when my parents needed more help as they became elderly, our kids were out of the home at that point in time because they were grown. But I don't think I could have done any of that without his support, but I think that basis of trying to get through those arguments, if you hang in there, it's wonderful. I mean, because where we're at today, it doesn't mean we still don't disagree sometimes, but they're nowhere near, obviously, the level in the younger years when you kind of want your own way. And, of course, I have half of my Italian father's blood. My mother was Irish, and my husband's what we call a bullheaded German. So, you know,
a lot of passion.
But it does work. I mean, it just, I think if you could keep in mind. And then I want to share, too, a couple years ago, and I can't tell you who it was, but I was on the Loyola website, and I'm not sure, like I said, I can't remember her name, but she mentioned how, of course, we all know we're different, men and women, but how women tend to talk to think, whereas men tend to think to talk.
I've heard that, too.
And I'm sure you've probably heard that, and I think it is true, because sometimes when your spouse doesn't say anything, as a woman, we're like, well, he's not saying anything, because we do tend to right away jump into, as females, talking as we're thinking it out, whereas they kind of have to think it out first. And we didn't realize it, but years ago we both realized that that's what was happening. Just because he wasn't saying anything didn't mean that he didn't have something to add. He had to figure out how he wanted to say it first, whereas I think we tend to kind of jump on the bandwagon and speak too quickly as females.
Right. Maybe
that's the difference in us, you know.
Maybe that's why that older ladies used to say to me, you know, just be quiet. And that's the secret of a happy marriage. Be quiet. I'm thinking, I don't know if I could do that. It's not in my DNA.
Thank you, Grace, for the call.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a good time maybe to point out that EWTN Religious Catalog, Debbie, has a ton of great resources on marriage. And I'm looking at a page right now. If you go to EWTNRC.com, they have books like John Ed Bankovic, Women in the Abundant Life. There's a book, What is Marriage? The Catholic Family Handbook. There's one, Marriage, subtitled Small Steps, Big Rewards. So maybe you don't need anything like this yourself. Maybe you do, but if you've got a son or daughter preparing to get married or recently married, or you know some people who are having some problems, buy them a book. Give them a gift of a book that could save their marriage. So go to EWTNRC.com and you will find a great selection there.
That was a great call by Grace in Bellevue, Ohio. And again, Grace, congratulations, 43 years. That is awesome. And Jerry, I love having this discussion because we don't really talk like this about marriages and stuff in the real world. Everybody kind of is out there sometimes in that social setting, and we have that social mask, if you will, put on. And this is healthy, and this allows us to know we're not alone. We all face kind of the same challenges. And how do we get through it as Catholic Christians? So let's hear what Jen has to say in Indianapolis, Indiana, on Catholic Radio Indy. Hi, Jen. Welcome to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Hi. I just I happened to turn on the radio and heard you guys talking about it. The one thing that kind of started it, and me like kind of discovering how to resolve an argument, because I'm very, very bad at that, was reading, and it's from a Protestant, but at least he's a Christian. Gary Chapman's five love languages, and my husband's is touch, and it's like very, very obviously touch. Like I can touch his arm and he's immediately like boom, calm, like not mad at me anymore. Like or I come up behind him and give him a hug or something like that. But mine isn't at all. Like mine is service, like devotion, like so. When he's done something, then he'll go like do the dishes or something. Like he just shuts down, and like he knows he's said something wrong, and he just goes and does the dishes. And that's his way of apologizing. And my way of apologizing is coming up and giving him a hug or something like that. And that's worked for us. And I think like reading that book, because I didn't even read the whole book. I just took the little quiz, and I'm like, right. Oh yeah, this is like way too obvious. Like what it is. But it was in our pre-Cana class that there were like several books that they were like, oh, you know, if you guys want to read these, and I was like, oh, that looks interesting. So I picked it up and kind of went through it, and that was extremely helpful. The other thing was a piece of advice that the priest gave me. This was a while back. Was, you know, when before he gets to that point that you guys are like arguing back and forth, just come up and touch his arm. Like just do it before it ever escalates to that point. Just touch his arm. Like, and so before it was like the hug, but then it's almost like I'm not mad. Like, just relax. Even if I am mad, Like, I have to be the one to cool it. And then basically anything that a Disney movie condemns, and I don't mean like the old Disney movies like Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, Cinderella, those are all, they basically approve the traditional roles, whereas anything like Beauty and the Beast and Afterwards, or Ariel and or Little Mermaid and Afterwards, anything that they condemn, like if you watch Mulan and they're singing the Honor to Us All, like listen to what they're basically making fun of, and then do that because there's a lot of like anti-traditional roles in that, and that has helped me
Jen,
kind of fall into that traditional role.
Sure. Jen, I agree with you on so much of what you're saying. I just wanted to scale back real quickly just for our listeners' sake. The 5 love languages that you're referring to, Gary Chapman's book, real simply is words of affirmation. By the way, Jen, my husband and I have done the book and the quiz several times, and mine is words of affirmation, in case you were wondering. Words of affirmation, quality time is number 2, receiving gifts is number 3, acts of service, and that's what yours is, Jen, number 4, and of your husband's is physical touch. And they talk about those are the ones that really they trigger those core elements that kind of have you respond in a very genuine and real way. And so that's how you can tap into that person. However, people float in and out of different categories, because I'm a big believer in not necessarily labeling someone, but in case you're interested, I'm words of affirmation. But Jen, thank you. Amazing call.
Another great call.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Marie, hang on. Marie, you're going to be right after Ed. Ed is in Buffalo, listening on the station of the Cross to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Ed, thanks for your patience there on the line, our friend. How are you? Hello, Ed. Do we have Ed? Ed, you got something to say? I know you do. Well, we'll check back with Ed in a minute. So, Marie, you are actually, we'll go to you now. Marie is in Texas listening to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Hi, Marie. Welcome to the program.
Uh-oh. Something wrong with our phone? Hello, is anybody there?
Come on.
Marie? Marie or Ed? Going once? Going twice?
Okay, well, yeah, I don't know what's going on there, but we'll have to, we do
Little
have some...
phone glitch.
Yeah, we have some other feedback, some other input on social media, Deb. So from EWTN Catholic Radio Facebook page live, Joanne said, I had a difficult marriage, but we were both committed to staying together. We were separated 2 times, but in the long run, we made it! ! My dear husband died of lung cancer 12 years ago. Another thing is we did love each other, but at times we had trouble with communication. So Debbie Joanne's very, very honest about that, but yet I'm sure with hard work and the grace of the sacrament, it sounds like they had a beautiful marriage. And Joanne, we're very sorry about the loss of your husband 12 years ago.
Yes, absolutely. And speaking of losses, I just wanted to say, again, I heard John Benkovic talk about it. Please make sure we continue up and ramp up the prayers for the folks that are hurricane victims in Houston and all up Florida and up the coast and now hitting Puerto Rico and Hurricane Maria and also the earthquake in Mexico. I heard there was a lot of children that were killed, and I think that I last checked, there was one child that they're still trying to rescue. It just breaks my heart because I can't even imagine if my child was off at school and to know that an earthquake hit and my child was underneath the rubble of a building. That just is you can't even imagine it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really amazing just how one after another these disasters have happened lately. So let's not only keep praying, but folks, help them financially too in any way that you can. Okay, I think we have Ed with us now in Buffalo, listening on the Station of the Cross. Hi, Ed. This is Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. How are you?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for letting me come back in. I had the radio on, so I turned it off. Anyway, if we're still on that topic of man and wife and how they get along together. My wife and I have been married for 17 years, and since we retired, we end up doing a lot of fairly positive things, like we help rescue dogs, and then we train a couple that are at Roswell, the Cancer Institute, and my wife has a heart as big as life, but a couple things. So I end up saying, I'm sorry, when sooner or later I'll say I'm sorry, might not be just right away. but it's kind of interesting in a lot of ways because the only thing that we have, just a couple of things that we get entrenched in, and unfortunately it's religion, because through your station, I've been reawakened to come back into the Catholic faith again.
Nice.
And she is a devoted atheist, you know. So anytime I have the radio on, she'll turn it off, or she'll walk out of the room. So I had read some of Lee Stovall's material about how to get your spouse back to you in the church. So, but it's an interesting life because we do so many other positive things, and our one therapy dog loves the world, so she goes everywhere, including the library and everywhere. So everybody knows her, and it's a little town. So quite often people slow down and say, "Hi, Mickey." So it's an interesting life, but I'm trying to figure out how to overcome that problem.
Right.
You know.
Well, here's the thing, Ed. I know Dr. Scott Hahn has written books on it as well, and you can go to the Religious Catalog, EWTN Religious Catalog. That would really help. There's resources there as well. But the one thing that I would just say, and I'm sure you're already aware of this and you're doing this, is that you're coming. You've had a awakening and coming back to the faith, and that's awesome. And we're going to pray for you and pray for your wife that there's a journey movement towards God in that respect. But with your wife, she's at a place where she's maybe not ready to receive that. So the best thing in the world for her to do is just let her watch you and let her experience you. And you can do that without any words. You just do that by living the faith and letting her see it in your mannerisms, in your facial expressions, just the joy in your heart. And it's like a magnet. She'll be curious and she'll want to know more, hopefully. And we're going to be praying for that. And it really can be something that is very organic, and it unfolds in her life, and she'll be open and maybe ready to journey and to explore God again. And that'll be a great thing. But trying, in my opinion, Jerry, tell me if you disagree, and trying to even convince her or argue with her or having the religion become a wedge, I think can be very destructive.
No, I think, Ed, you fall in love deeper and deeper with Jesus every day, and the church and the Blessed Mother. And when you said, the minute you said, Ed, she's a devoted atheist, I was going to blurt out, for now. That's the thought that came to me, Ed. So we got to get going here to end the show. But thanks for the call, Ed. Just be in prayer. We'll be definitely in prayer for your wife as well, and any other couples that are in similar situations. Debbie, I just want to read Anthony via email at take2@ewtn.com. Said, my wife and I try not to escalate any disagreements to a fight or prideful you first. So we both try to talk it out on why you want what you want and why I want what I want. To us, there's no need to disagree on every little thing. So when we do perform this exercise, we really try to pick our battles. But when we do have a disagreement, we both apologize. Typically me, since I'm the prideful one. Haha.
Oh,
thanks for taking my email. Yeah. Regards, Anthony. Good to hear from you, Anthony.
I love that. That was great. Jerry, I think this was a very helpful discussion. I hope we do some relationship topics, because I know that I took, 2.5 pages of notes. They were big notes. I have to write quickly.
Yeah, well, Debbie is actually going to be traveling again, kind of bookend travel days. Debbie was traveling Monday, so I was with you alone, and it'll be just you and me tomorrow. Take two with Jerry and Debbie. And we're going to put this question to you. Would you run for political office? Think about that. Do you think, man, I'd love to make a difference. I'd really like to get out there and turn things around for the better? Or would you just simply say, never in a million years would I put myself and my family through that? That's our conversation tomorrow. Would you run for political office? Debbie, travel safe.
Thank you so much. Until tomorrow, have a beautiful and blessed day.